Today's project is going to be a lot of fun. So last time, we successfully ended up creating our channel point redemption alerts. So just those cards that would flip down and then show the channel point redemption thing that was being redeemed with the icon for the redemption itself, the cost, and then the description. And then it would just stay there for about 10 seconds and then flip up. And that was one of the primary things that I wanted to create whenever I started this software development series focusing on building a Twitch bot. This is like the main thing that I wanted to build whenever starting this series. This is it's going to be a live auto-generated Twitch clip reel. And what that means is that what we're going to do is we are going to read in every single clip that has been created for my channel. And if you're following along, you should be able to do this for your channel as well. So to read in every single clip that's been created for your channel, and then save that as an array within the bot that just contains information for every clip. And that information is going to be sent over to our overlay. And then our overlay is going to read in the individual clips and then pull up a Twitch player and then play the clips back to back while showing the name of the person that clipped it until we run out of clips that have been clipped for our channel. So we also do not want to repeat any of the clips that we have played so far. So in order to get this done, I've already set up a few things. So what I've done is I've already set up a separate HTML page. So we're not going to do this directly on our overlay. This is going to be actually a separate overlay. So what I did is I just created another very basic HTML page. And on this HTML page, we are just linking our socket.io script in the same way that we did for our overlay stuff. And we also created a JavaScript file specifically for this HTML file, as well as a CSS file specifically for this HTML file. And within this, we only have 3 divs. So we have a div that's just wrapping all of the content that's going to be showing the Twitch player and everything else. And then we have another div that's going to show the name of the person that flipped the current clip being played. And then here we're going to show the actual Twitch player playing the clip. And then here is just the JavaScript file, which is currently empty, as well as the CSS file, which is currently empty. So what we're needing to do is we're needing to first set up the information to pull the clips themselves from Twitch and then put it into our bot. And then once we have that information within our bot, we can then come to the overlay JavaScript file. So the clip reel overlay JavaScript file, and then read that in from the bot and then randomly play those clips. And then we're going to style everything so that the name of the person will show up and stay there instead of blocking anything on the video. And it'll also just be nice and stylized, as well as keeping the video itself as full screen as possible. So what we're going to do is like I said, we're going to start off with things within the bot itself. And this is going to be significantly simpler than it all might sound. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are just going to create a variable that is just called Twitch Reels. And the only reason that I'm capitalizing the T is because Twitch is a proper name, and for some reason I cannot force myself to put it lowercase. So we are just going to have this as an empty array. That's it. So that's what we're going to be doing to store the clips that we are pulling in. So the next thing that we're going to do is we need to create a separate listener within the bot that is going to listen for whenever the Twitch Reels overlay is loaded. So whenever we are actually starting to run the clips, we need to send some kind of indication to the bot that we need to retrieve the clips to then send to the overlay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another listener within the bot. So what we're going to do is we're going to say socket.on, and the name of the event that we are listening for here is going to be called get clips. And just like with all the other stuff, we are going to create a function that is run whenever this event handler is called, or whenever this event is triggered. So, but this time we need to create a asynchronous function because we need to run some asynchronous code. So we're going to run this asynchronously, and we're going to say a asynchronous function. We don't need any parameters for this. So we have an asynchronous function, and then within this function, we are first going to determine if we have pulled in clips from Twitch already. And if we have pulled in clips from Twitch already, then we don't need to pull them again. So the reason that we're doing this is we need to limit the amount of times that we hit the Twitch API. So that is going to, ensure that we don't overburden the Twitch API and go over various limits that the Twitch API puts in place to prevent things, like spamming and, stuff like that. And if you do end up going over your limits, you can very possibly get your Twitch API key rejected and you can no longer use the Twitch API. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if the Twitch Reels length is 0, meaning that there's nothing in that array, then we're going to pull in the clips themselves. But before I do this, what we're going to do is after we pull in the clips, or if we pull in the clips or not, what we're going to do is we're going to, after all the stuff that we're about to do is done, we need to emit another event. So just so I don't get my bracketing mixed up, we're going to emit the event now. So what this is going to do is it's going to send an event back to our Twitch clips reel overlay that's then going to give it the information it needs to start playing the clips. So just like above, we're going to emit the get clips event, and we are going to send along the Twitch clips array, Twitch Reels array. So actually I may have misnamed this. Yeah, I did misname this. I should have named this Twitch clips. So let me fix that. So Twitch Reels doesn't make any sense. So let me just put this as Twitch clips and rename this. So clip and clip. All right, now that we've done all this and fixed up our variables and ensured that we are only pulling in clips from Twitch once we have determined if there are clips to pull in or not, then what we're going to do is if we have no clips within the Twitch clips array, we are going to do a Axios call. So we're going to do a call to the Twitch overlay, to the Twitch API. And so since we're doing asynchronous functions, we're going to await a Axios.getRequest. And just like before, with a Axios function, you have the Axios call, and then you have a then call, which happens whenever the call is a success, and then you have a catch call whenever the call has some form of error. So what we're going to do is we're just going to separate this out. So just to keep things clean. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a call to this specific address. I'm going to copy and paste it in because this is going to be a nasty length address. So what we're doing is we're making a call to this address here. And what we're doing is we're making a call to the clips section of the Twitch API, and we have to do this for the broadcaster ID. And if you've been following along, you get the broadcaster ID from your configuration.broadcaster ID in the JSON file. I mean, the JSON section of your configuration file. And if you've not done this before, just do a channels call to your Twitch username, and it'll give you your broadcaster ID. And you should really save that ID just somewhere where you can either have it in a configuration file or you can just copy and paste it easily, because you do need your broadcaster ID, which is just a number for various things within the Twitch API. So what we're doing is we're making a call to this part of the Twitch API. We have two query parameters. We have the broadcaster ID, and then we have a query parameter called first. And what this tells us is we want the first 100 clips that you pull from this specific broadcaster ID. And this is 100 clips is the highest number of clips that you can pull from a single request. So we are going to handle situations for if you have more than 100 clips on your channel. So we're going to handle that shortly. So we're going to do, and so we're going to make a call to that address, and we also need to send some headers to the Twitch API. So it's the same headers that we've been working with for quite some time. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this in again. So we're going to use the headers of our client ID, which is our API key, and the bearer token, which is our access token, which is, if you've been following along, generated whenever we start the bot. So what we're going to do is, before we go to the then block, the then clause, what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the catch, because it's just going to be easier for us to keep things in check. So you'll see in a second why I'm doing it this way. So we're going to do is, for the catch, we're just going to be looking for the error parameter that gets called, that gets pulled in if we end up having an error. And so we're just going to have this as an error function. And so if we end up having some kind of problem whenever we call this from the Twitch API, all we're going to do is we're just going to console.log the error to see where things went wrong. Now, within the then block of our code, what we're going to do is we are going to first say that we're going to have another asynchronous function. So we're going to have a async function that is going to, this is going to also be an arrow function, and it's going to take in a single parameter called the response. So this is going to be another arrow function. And within this arrow function, what we're going to do is we are first going to say that our Twitch clips is going to now be the response from the Twitch API call itself. And so to do that, we just call the response data. And so we can see this from the Twitch API itself, which we can see here. So on the Twitch API, for whenever we are calling clips, we can see on the right here where it shows the data object. So whenever you're making a call from Axios, it's going to call in a data object by itself. And then within the Twitch API, there is an array that's also called data. So that's why here we have the response.data.data. So that's why it looks that way. So with that out of the way, so what we're going to do is we're going to first say that the Twitch clips array is now the first 100 clips that have been pulled in from our channel. Now, it's worth noting that the way that Twitch hands us clips is it hands us clips from the most viewed clips on our channel down. So if you only want your most 100 popular clips to go through, you could stop here and you would probably be fine. However, we want, for my purposes at least, we want to have every single clip that has ever been clipped on my stream to be within the Twitch clips array. So what we're going to do is we are going to work with another array, and we are going to call this next clip set. What we're working with here is we're going to pull in the response data again, but instead of the data, we're going to pull in something called pagination. And pagination is just a fancy term that whenever you're calling things from an API, what a pagination is it's an indicator of the next set of data within the API calls. So let me rephrase. So because we're pulling in the first 100 clips from our stream, what we're getting is a pagination cursor, and that cursor is just a long string of seemingly random numbers and characters. And that string indicates the next set of clips beyond the 100 clips that we just pulled in. So instead of pulling in clips 1 to 100, if there are more than 100 clips on our channel, this piece of data right here will pull in a non-null or non-undefined value. It will pull in just a string of letters and numbers. And so assuming that this is a string of letters and numbers, we have more clips to pull in. And so what we're going to do is we are going to say while, we're going to create a while loop. And so we're going to say while next clip set. And so we're doing it this way because we're saying while next clip set exists, while next clip set is not null or not undefined, we want to run a loop. And so within this loop, we are going to create another Axios call to the Twitch API to the same address, but we're going to do it for the next set of 100 clips until we're done, until we've pulled in every single clip from our channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another await Axios get. And so just like before, oops, not a post, sorry, Axios.get. And we're going to do a then, just like before, and a catch. So just like before. And we will separate these out for better readability. And just like before, we will go for our catch block first. So instead of saying error, because we already have an error catch block right here. So instead of saying error, we're going to say next error, just to be very clear about what we're working with. So we're just going to make this into an arrow function. And then we are going to say console.log, just like before, console.log, and then we're just going to print out the next error, if there is in fact an error. So within the get block, the get clause, we are going to have another call to the same address. I'm going to copy and paste it to show the difference here. So we're going to have another call to the same address, and just to make this a little readable, so what we're gonna do is we are pulling in another call to the Twitch API. So we're doing the broadcaster ID, the same as before, and we're also calling the first 100 clips that we want to pull in. However, we have another query parameter, and so what this query parameter is, it's called after, and this is going to take in the pagination value. So again, if the pagination value is actually defined, this is just going to be a random or semi-random string of numbers and letters that Twitch will understand that is specific to my channel. So this is saying, okay, instead of pulling in clips 1 to 100, we now want clips 101 to 200, or 201 to 300, or 4 to 301 to 400, so on and so forth. So that's what this is for. And so just as before, we also need some headers, which is going to be a JSON object within a JSON object. So I will copy that in, and it's going to be the same headers that we've been working with before, and just the client ID, which is your API key, and the access token. And now we can work with the then clause again. So here we're not working with an asynchronous function. We are working with just a random, or not a random, just a regular function. So what we're going to do, instead of saying response, we are going to say next response in order to keep things nice and clear. So next response, and going to be another arrow function. And within this arrow function, we are going to say that if the response, also I seem to have missed some things here, I apologize. It seems that I missed some extra information. So I forgot to check during our initial API call that if we successfully pull in something from the API, we then need to make sure that we have a response status of 200. So if you've been following along with this and you have been understanding the response codes for the HTTP requests, you'll remember that a response code of 200 means that we have successfully pulled in data from the source that we have been asking data from. So I forgot to check if we have been getting a successful response from this, which is rather essential because if we don't, we could also end up crashing things. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if the response status is 200, then we move on, assuming that it's a successful request. And then otherwise, what we're going to do is we are going to console.log. We're just going to pull in the response status. So we want to know what the actual status was. And we're going to pull in what the data that we retrieved was. So this is just another type of error state. So that is my fault. I apologize. So what we're going to do is we are going to make sure that I'm pulling in the correct spots. So we're going to pull in all of this, and we're going to say that if the response status code is 200, then we're working with a successful Twitch API call. And then if not, we are not working with a successful call, and we want to see what happens. So just like that, we need to check if the next response status is also 200 because we're making another call to the Twitch API. So we need to make sure that we are successfully pulling in the data that we want. So we want to say if the next response dot status is equal to 200, then we move on to do the success case. And if not, then we want to say that we're just going to, just like before, we are going to console log the next response status that we received, as well as any data that we received as well. So that fixes that. So if we successfully pulled in something from the next API call, what we're going to do is we are going to append the next set of clips to the current set of clips. So because we've already pulled in the first 100 clips, or 200 clips, or 300 clips, and so on, we need to not replace them. We need to add the next set to it. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called the spread operator. And what the spread operator does is it takes in all the data from the current set of data that's in your current array. So in this case, we're just taking all of the current data that's in the Twitch clips array, and we're going to append to the end of it another set of array, another set of data within an array. So in this case, we're saying the next response, data, just like before. So like up here, we're saying the initial set of data, the initial 100 clips is the response data's data. But because we already have clips in this array, we want to take all the clips that are already there and append to the end of it the next set of clips. And that's how we can do that. There's other ways of appending, but I wanted to show doing it this way to explain the spread operator, because the spread operator is really useful for both arrays and JSON objects, because you can save yourself a whole lot of duplication by just using the spread operator and then adding in bits of information for various types of arrays and objects. So just to show you how that works. So now that we've pulled in the next section of clips and added it to the array, we want to reassign the value of the next clip set. So instead of having it be the last pagination cursor, we want it to be the next pagination cursor. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the next response data and then the pagination dot cursor. So what this is going to do is it's going to reassign the value of this and then restart the loop. And then so we're going to come back up here to the while loop condition. So it's going to check the value of next clip set again, which we've just reset right here. And if this variable still has a value, then we're going to run through the loop again. If not, we just stop the loop. And so that's actually it for how to pull in all of the clips from your stream with the Twitch API and also using Axios. So since that's it, all we need to do is add in something else that allows us to then access the new overlay that we've created. So the Twitch clip reel overlay HTML page. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new GET request right here. And we're going to say, actually, no, we're not going to create it right there. This is actually going to be on the app overlay. Sorry, the overlay app. So if we did this on the app section, we would actually be creating something on the HTTPS side of things, which is not what we want. Our host server is actually on HTTP, not HTTPS. So what we want to do is we want to have this on the overlay app, and we want to have it do a GET request. And the address that we are working with is we're going to call this /Twitch clips reel. So we're going to go to, whenever we're done with this, localhost :4001 /Twitch clip reel. And then we're going to throw in a function, which is going to take in the request and the response. And then that's just going to be a function that pulls in a HTML file and then sends it to the overlay. And so we're going to say response.send file, and we're going to go to our directory name, which is a string, and we're going to say the HTML folder / the HTML file that we want to send. So Twitch clip reel.html, which, as I said before, we have already created here. So, and you can see on our folder structure on the left that that's already been created as well. And that's everything that we need to do on the bot side of things. So now what we can do is we can actually move over to the overlay JavaScript itself. So whenever I'm saying the overlay, in this case, I'm actually talking about the clip reel overlay. So not the overall, bot overlay that we've been working on up to this point. So what we're going to do is we are going to work on the actual visuals of this now. So the first thing we want to do is we want to allow this new overlay to connect to our sockets from the bot, just like what we were doing on our main overlay. So we're going to start off by saying io.connect. So just like before. So connect, and this is a function. And so now we can actually receive data from the bot. And what we're going to do is as soon as this overlay is loaded, what we want to do is we want to send a signal to the bot that we want to actually get something from the bot. So in this case, what we want to get is specifically the Twitch clips array that's been pulled in. So what we're going to do is we are going to, instead of saying socket.on and listen for an event, what we're going to do is we are going to emit an event to the bot. We're going to make a request to the bot, and we're going to send the event called get clips, which, if you recall, is the listener event that we're looking for in the bot itself. So we're going to send in get clips, and for the data, we're actually just going to send an empty string because we don't have to send any data. We just want to, we just want to trigger the event on the bot to then send something back to the overlay itself. So then we want to set up some variables. So we're going to say the clips themselves are going to be stored as an empty array at first. And because we don't want our clips to be repeated once we've started, we want to have a constant, and that constant is going to be called used clips. So for every used clip that we have, for every clip that we play, we are going to send the index of that clip to the used clips array. So what we're going to do is every time we play a clip, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to push that clip's index to the used clips array. And then every time we are done playing a clip, we are going to check to see if the next random clip has already been played. And if it hasn't, we play that clip. If it has, we select a clip randomly again until we get a clip that has not been played. So then we're just going to pull in the two HTML elements. That's going to allow us to more easily do things with this. So we're going to say clipped by, and we're just pulling in the document that get element by ID, and we're specifically looking for the ID of clipped by. So this is going to make things easier for us. So we don't have to do document.getElement by ID /string, parentheses clip by every time. So in the same way, we're going to say another constant called clip, and the clip is going to be the document get element by ID, and that's just going to be clip. So it has to be a string. So, and these two things correspond to these two divs on the Twitch clip reel HTML file. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create a function that is going to pull in the next clip that we are going to play, then create the HTML necessary to play the clip, and then play the clip, and then wait the specific amount of time that the clip is running, and then check to see if there's another clip that needs to be run, and then so on and so forth until we run out of clips. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a function. We're going to create it as an arrow function. So we're going to say const next clip, and we're going to create this as an arrow function. So because we don't have any parameters, we're just going to have this as empty parentheses, and then the arrow, and then here's our function. So, and then within this, the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to select a random clip. So we're going to call this, we're going to create a variable, we're going to call it selected clip. And the selected clip, and we're going to do this at random. So we have to actually do a little bit of math. I know it's not as scary as what it sounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to say math.floor. And what this does is whenever we create a random number, random numbers are usually decimal values. And so we don't want a decimal value. We want an integer. We want a whole number. And so we want to, every time we get a random number, we want to round down. It doesn't matter if it's above 0.5 or not. We want to round down every time. So we want to say math floor, which rounds down every time. Then we want to say math.random, which what math.random does is it generates a random number between 0 and 1. So any decimal value between 0 and 1. So, and then in order to get a random number between 0 and anything else, what we have to do is multiply that by whatever random, or whatever maximum number that we want. So in this case, we want to have the maximum number that can be pulled in be the length of the clips array. So for the number of clips that we have, we want to be able to select one of those clips. And so here's the thing about this right here. So what this is going to do is so let's just say that our clips array is 100 clips, or it's 100 elements in the array. This is not going to select between 1 and 100. What it's going to do is it's going to select between 0 and 99. So the maximum number that you put in here is actually always going to be one less than the number you put in. So if you put in 256, the maximum number is actually going to be 255 because you're going from 0 to 1 less than the maximum number instead of 1 to the maximum number. And so if you wanted to actually get this to be 1 to the maximum number, you would put that in parentheses and you would just say +1. But we don't want that. So we want it to actually be 0 to the length, to 1 less than the length of the clips array, because 0 is a array index. So remember, arrays start at index element 0. So that's how you get the first random clip. Now, what this is going to do is it's just going to select a single clip. However, we need to make sure that we haven't already selected that clip already. So what we're going to do is we're going to say while the used clips array. So while used clips, so I need to call this used clips. So while used clips includes the selected clip, we need to get another clip. So what this is saying, if this clip has already been played, get another clip. So if this has already been done, so copy this and then paste it here. So just keep reassigning this value until we get a clip that has not been played. And then once we find the clip that has not been played, what we want to do is we want to push that clip to the used clip array. So we're going to say used clips push, and then we're going to say the selected clip. Now, mind you, we're not actually storing like all of the clip information in the used clips array. We're only storing the array index that the clip is stored in from the clips array, if that makes sense. So instead of storing a whole bunch of information, we're just storing a number that references that clip. So what we're doing is we're saying select a clip, and then we're saying while the clip that we have selected has already been played, select another clip, and then once we found a clip that we have not played, keep that clip and then push it to the used clips array so that the next time we run this function, that clip will then be also in the used clips array. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to start assigning the values, the actual content, to the two HTML elements that's going to be showing the clip and the person that made the clip. So what we're going to do is we're going to first say clipped by, and we're going to say the inner HTML. We want the inner HTML of this to be a div. So without that many V's, my V key has been tapping quite a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to clip, so a div that says clipped by, and then a colon space. What we're doing is we're going to say we're going to pull in the clips array, and then we're going to get the clips array at the index of the selected clip, and then we're going to say the creator name like this. Then we're just going to close the div, and then we're going to create another div within this for showing when the clip was actually created. And actually, I should have put that in single quotes as well. So we're going to take plus and single quotes, and we're going to say another div. And within this div, what we're going to do is we want to create a date that shows when the clip was created. So I'm just going to separate this out. And the way that we're going to do that is we are going to say we're going to have a div. We want to have a new date. What we're going to do is we're going to create a date object. And a date object is just a standard thing in JavaScript. And what we're going to hand this, we're going to hand the date object is as an argument, is we are going to hand it something from the clips array, specifically from the selected clip index. So the selected clip we're pulling from. And then we're going to get the created at attribute. Then once we have that, we're going to say to locale date string. And so you'll notice it's not local date string, it's locale. So like location to a locale. So this is going to format the date in such a way where it's more specific to say where you live. So that the formatting is where you live. So instead of putting a date and a time, this is just going to put a date. And then that's all we have to do for the clipped by HTML element. And if you're curious where I'm pulling in this information in order to know what attributes to use, I'm pulling that in from this section of the Twitch API. It's the get clips call on the Twitch API. I will leave the link to this in the description. So if you look on the right, you'll notice that I have the creator name attribute here. And then I also have the created at attribute right here, which is what we were just using in the HTML. So if you want to know all the stuff that you need from the clip data itself, this is where you get it. So let's go back to the code itself. And now let's work on actually showing the clip. And this is going to be quite a extensive process. So what we're going to do is we are going to say clip.innerHTML, just like before, it equals. And this is where things are going to get kind of nasty. So what we're going to do is we are going to create an iframe. And iframes in HTML are basically this concept, that the structure that allows you to load a page within a page. So you can look at it as like an internet frame, I guess you could say. I don't know exactly what iframe stands for, but that's just how I'm looking at it. And so we're going to create an iframe, and this is how the Twitch documents show us how to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the documentation that you find here on the Twitch API. So This is a separate site. I will also leave this in the description. So what we're using is this call down here. So we're going to create an iframe, and we're going to create a source, and then the height and the width, and then we're going to close the iframe tag, but we're going to use some extra parameters. So we're actually going to use the muted parameter, and we're also going to use the autoplay parameter. So those are things that we are going to need. Oh, right here. So we're going to use the autoplay and the muted query parameters for this in order to make sure that everything just plays and works instead of just muting and just staying on a paused screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the code, and we are going to create an iframe. We are going to have an ID for this iframe called clip. So our HTML ID for clip. And our next attribute that we're looking for is going to be a source. This is the source page that we are looking for within the frame itself. This is the page that it's actually going to load. And I'm actually going to copy and paste this because this is going to be rather extensive. So I'm going to move this down to here, and then I'm going to come up to my prepared code, and I'm going to copy and paste this in and explain what I'm doing. So we're going to send things here. So, and actually I messed this up. So what we want to do is we want to remove this. We want to move our source here and close it here. There we go. And then I can paste this. So then we have to have some quotes right here. And also there. I think I'm messing this up somewhere. I think my copying and pasting has messed this up at a certain point. But we will fix it shortly. So we're doing, yes, that fixes it. So what we're doing is we are calling a page. So we're getting the embedded URL from the clip, from the currently selected clip. And then what we have to do is once we get the embed URL, we have to have some query parameters. The first parameter that we have to have is called parent. And because we are running all of this on our computer, we're hosting this locally, and then we're serving it locally as well. What we want is we have to have this showing on local host. I know that our port is currently 4001, but the parent here doesn't care what port we're on. All it cares about is the top level part of our site. And we are using localhost as our top level address, as it were. And then the next parameter is we want the clip to autoplay. So we have autoplay equals true. And we want the clip to not be muted. So we have it as it's muted being false. So after this, what we want is we want to have another attribute in there. And we want to call this allow full screen. And that needs to equal a value of true, close quotes. And then we can pull this down here. And then we also want a height parameter. So we want the height to be the entire height of our stream output. So for this, put the height and width as the full-on width of your monitor. So if you're playing this at 1080p, you want your height to be 1080, and then you want your width to be 1920. So you want the width to be 1920. Now, the only reason you may not want your height and width to be the same is because there are instances, like say if your Twitch output is not downscaling from your monitor output, you want to have that as the height and width here. But usually I found that most people downscale their monitor to 720p or what have you in order to have this work. So we just moved everything here and then closed our iframe. So this is what shows the clip itself and then plays it. I'm not sure why it's a space between this. So you want to have this. There you go. So this should be everything. Now, what we want to do is we want to play the clip. So the clip is just automatically playing at this point. So now what we want to do is we want to wait for the length of the clip and then decide if there are more clips to be played. And so in order to do that, in order to actually wait for that to happen, we need to do a timeout. So we need to set a timeout. And the timeout, just like the intervals that we were working with before, is going to take in a function and then an amount of time to wait. So we have the function first, and we're just going to do this for now, and then the comma, and then the amount of time that we're waiting. And we get the amount of time that we're waiting in seconds by grabbing the currently selected clip. So clips at the index of the selected clip, and then the attribute that we're looking for is called duration. And this only gives you the number of seconds, but the timeout function or the timeout command actually works with milliseconds. So in order to actually have this work, we need to multiply everything by 1000. So in order to have this work in milliseconds instead of just seconds. So what we're going to do is within this function, the first thing that we're going to do is once the clip is over, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear the clipped by and clipped inner HTML. So we want the inner HTML of the clipped by section to be an empty string, which just clears it out. And then we want the clip inner HTML to also be an empty string, which just clears it out. Then what we're going to do is we are going to check if we have more clips to play. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say if the used clips length does not equal the clips length array, the length of the clips array, then that means we have more clips to play. And then we're just going to call the next clip command again, which is the command we just created. So, which just runs all of this stuff that we did up here again. So this is how we're going to cycle through all the clips that we've created. And now the last thing that we have to do to actually make this thing work is to actually wait until the page is loaded, and then we pull in the clip information, and then once we receive the clip information, we start playing the first clip. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a socket listener. So we're going to say socket.on, like we've done a few times already before, and we're looking for the event of get clips, just like we've been doing with all the rest. So we're going to say get clips, and you can name these whatever you want. They don't all have to be named the same. I'm just keeping them named the same for consistency. So once this is triggered, we want to run a function, and this is going to take in a parameter, and we're going to call it retrieved clips. So this is us pulling in the clips from the bot, and then once we've gotten the clips from the bot, what we're going to do is we're going to say the clips array is now equal to the retrieved clips. And then once we have the retrieved clips in that array, we then run the next clip function in order to start playing the clips back to back. And now we're done. This is all that's necessary. 37 lines of code is all that's necessary to pull in the clips that we've pulled in from the Twitch API on our bot, and then emitted an event saying, hey, we're ready for the clips. And then we receive the clips and then play the clips repeatedly. That's it. So now the last thing that we need to do is do the CSS for this in order to make sure that everything looks okay, in order to, make sure that there's no just random hiccups visually and things look visually appealing. So what we're going to do is we're going to first go for the body tag. So just the entire HTML page. So, and we're just going to say that the width of this is going to be 100%. We want it to take up the entire width of the screen. And then the height is going to just kind of handle itself. And then we're going to grab the wrapper, which, by the way, I'm not a wrapper, which you can see here wraps the two divs that are the clipped by and the clipped array. Clipped elements. So then for this, we want the background color to be transparent. And then we also want the width here to be 100%, just as before. So we want both of these to take up all of the page. And now we want to define how the clipped by section of this is going to look. So we're going to say clipped by, and this is going to have quite a bit of stuff. So we want the position of this to be absolute so that we can define specifically where everything is going to be on the screen. And we also want everything within this div to be centered. So we want to say the text align, we want this to be centered. And so the position of the page, we want this to be at the very top of the page. So we want to say the very top, so 0. And we also want it to be all the way on the left of the page, so also 0. So, and then within this, we want to leave some padding around the words themselves. So we're going to have around 16 pixels of padding. Mind you, I did all of this before the recording of this video, just to keep things a bit more streamlined, but this is pretty simple to come up with once you get a kind of a feel of CSS. So now we want to create a border around it. So I decided to create a border of 2 pixels, and it's going to be a solid silver for obvious reasons. And now we want the background of this to actually be a custom RGBA value. So we need the RGBA because we need the alpha channel, and then the alpha channel is what allows us to set transparency. So we want this to be semi-transparent. We want it to be a black background that is semi-transparent. So we're going to do is we're going to say red is black, red is 0, green is 0, blue is 0, which creates black. And then we want the transparency of this to be 75%. So the way to do that is you say 0.75, because this goes from 0 to 1. 0 being completely transparent, 1 being fully visible. So 75% is 0.75. We want the color of the text itself to also be silver for obvious reasons. We want the font size to be a nice big 32 pixels. And then we're going to say the Z index. We want that to be 1. Now, if you've never seen the Z index in CSS before, think of the Z index like a layer in Photoshop. So whenever you're working with layers in Photoshop, what you're doing is you're stacking things on top of each other. So like the bottom layer would be layer 0, and then the layer on top of that would be layer 1, and then the layer on top of that would be layer 2, and so on. So what this does is it allows us to define what is on top of what. So we want to make sure that the clipped by information is sitting on top of the clip itself. And so we're saying that the Z index is 1. So now what we can do is we can find the clip attributes themselves. So the clip CSS, and this is going to be pretty basic. So we're going to say the position here is also absolute. We want this to be the top of 0 and the left is 0, so it stays taking up the full screen. And then we want the Z index here to be 0 because we want this to be below the clipped by div. And that is everything. So the last thing that we can do is create a page in our OBS. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a connection in OBS. So this is going to be a little weird. And so I've already actually done this. So what we're gonna do is we are going to, so not a new scene, we're gonna pull in a new source. We're gonna create a browser source. And I already did this. So what we're gonna do is we're going to call it clip reel. And what you're gonna do is, I'm gonna clear it for now. So what you're gonna do is you're going to have the URL for this be localhost 4001 or whatever port you're running it on, and then / Twitch clip reel. You want the width and the height to be 1920 by 1080. You want and then you also want these sections down here to be checked. You want shutdown source when not active when not visible to be on. And then you also want to have the refresh browser when the scene becomes active turned on. So this way you don't actually have things just like taking up too much resources on your computer when it's not actually turned on. This will save you some CPU. So what I've actually already done, so I'm gonna get rid of this, is I created a group. I created a group in OBS. So, and I called it clip reel. And what this does for me is it creates two sources within the scene. So what it does is it loads in that same HTML page that we just had. And then it also has a text overlay. So all this is just a random OBS text scene or text source. And all I did is I just had it say loading next clip. And then I, set up various things to have this just display on the screen. So what this is going to do is this is going to sit right underneath the clip reel overlay. So whenever it's loading the next clip, you're going to see a quick blip in the overlay itself. And in that time, you're going to see the loading next clip thing right under that. If you want to get clever and actually do a loading next clip section within your HTML, you can do that as well, which I would actually encourage you to do that as a exercise for yourself. I just did that for myself, just to keep things more modular for myself. I may actually go back and make this some within the HTML itself, but we will see. So the next thing for us to do is actually try this. So what we're going to do is we are going to cd into my source folder, and we are going to start the bot. So, and you're going to see a bunch of errors pop up, but don't worry about that because I did not actually turn on the event sub stuff for webhooks. So we're not worrying about webhooks right now. This will work without webhooks. I just wanted to turn this on so that we can actually try it. And so then what I'm going to do now is I am going to load in the group that I created for this. And then we are going to see if this actually works. If it starts playing clips, then we know it works. So let's see. So we're loading the clips, and this will probably take a second, especially if you have hundreds of clips. So just give it a little bit, and I may actually have to turn off the clip thing and turn it back on. So let's see. So far, it does not seem to be loading in the clips. What's going wrong? I reckon it was a hop, skip, and a jump in time. Oh, I see what happened. The width here was not in a string. I was treating it as a number and not a string. So that should fix this. So that was a slight oversight on my part. Let us restart the bot. Okay, and then let's turn on the clips thing. So it should be loading in the clips now. And this should, like I said, take a few seconds. Because for me, it has to pull in a few hundred clips. Okay, it's still not working. So let's figure out why. A few moments later, I found it. So it looks like the problem came in whenever I was setting up the route on our bot to get to the Twitch clip reel section, the Twitch clip reel page. So instead of just saying Twitch clip reel, I forgot to add in my slash. So this isn't actually a proper route until you add in the slash. So that should fix this. That was a foolish oversight on my part, but let's try it again. So now we are loading our clips. I hope. Yes, so we are showing that we're pulling in pagination data. So we're pulling in each one of the sets of clips, and we just loaded a clip, and the clip is playing. This is how it works. So what it shows up top is...
Is that a zombie kappa? What is this Rastas?
So-
Put in my chat log.
I'm gonna mute the audio for now. So what we've done is we are going to play a clip. So actually, let this go watch.
You know.
I'll turn off the overlay for now. So what we've done here is we have pulled in all of our clips, and you'll notice that in the console log here on the bot, it's showing these random or semi-random letters and numbers. These are the pagination cursors that I was mentioning earlier. So it kept on pulling in clips 100 at a time until we ran out of clips to pull in, which is then where it became undefined, and the while loop that we had set up earlier was cut. So now if we start the overlay again, the loading screen is not going to be there. It's just going to start playing a clip. Watch.
All right, that's cool. You do that.
This is actually the most
He's not
popular
gonna
clip on
let
my
you.
channel.
He's not gonna let you.
Whatever.
All right. I'm gonna use the missiles. I'm gonna load stuff up. I hope everyone's doing that too. Yes, they are.
Yep. I was going to the other one. I was like, oh, there you go.
So anyway, the reason that it loaded immediately is because we had saved all of that clip data within the bot itself. Whenever the overlay itself said, hey, I'm ready to receive the clips, the bot was like, okay, let me check and see if I have clips. So in this case, we did, because the Twitch clips, array length was greater than 0. So it just said, okay, I'm going to hand you the clips that I already have. So you didn't have to have an initial huge loading like you did before. You just loaded all the stuff in that was already there and continued playing. And this is how you create a randomly generated auto-playing Twitch clip reel that will randomly play your clips back to back on your stream so that you can have something cooler for your welcome overlay or your BRB overlay or anything else that you would need for that. In the next video, I'm thinking that we are going to go back to overlay and alert style stuff and create a system that will allow us to show milestone alerts. So like, for example, if you have for every 250 followers, you'll get some kind of cool alert that just celebrates this new milestone that you've had or any other kind of milestone that you want to celebrate. So if you've been keeping up or if you want to learn more, subscribe and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.